I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. If we could start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Skagg, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell.
Here.
Ms. Nenny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Muterspaw.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. This evening, we'll start with our citizen comments. We have received 3 of them. So if, when I call your name, you can come up to the dais. We have 4 minutes. We would love to hear everything you have to say. Just state your name and address for the record. So we'll start with Judge Robert Peeler, followed by Beverly Akins, and then Rocky Sexton.
I have my timer going here.
Very good.
Good evening. It's good to see you. I am Robert Peeler, Common Pleas Judge in Warren County, Ohio. I feel I have a connection to Middletown because I have many cases from here.
Do you have an address you can just state for the record for us so we've got it? Do you have an address you can state for the record?
The subject?
An address, mailing address, location. We have to have a name and
500
address.
500 Justice Drive, Lebanon, Ohio. Is that?
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
And you may want to move that mic just a little closer to your mouth. I think it's not quite picking you up.
Is that better?
Maybe towards you a little more. There we go, perfect, thank you.
Okay. I attended church here for 14 years. And I have many friends here. I was on the administrative board at Christ United Methodist Church. In 2012, I was asked by the Ohio Department of Corrections to start a pilot program for medication assistance treatment that was intended to be a pilot for the state of Ohio. We did that, and we're going strong. We've been recognized across the country for the work we're doing. We changed our name from drug court to recovery court because that's what it's about. The biggest challenges in this have been not the individuals, but it's just dealing with the obstacles to recovery. It's a learning process. The primary obstacles we found started off with the availability of treatment, then transportation, then employment, and recovery housing is a big issue. And of course, stigma and lack of education about the disease of addiction. We've made significant progress with the availability of treatment. And I was asked in 2014 by Senator Portman to participate in a forum in Washington, D.C. From people across the country. And what we came away from there with, we're not going to be able to arrest and incarcerate our way out of this problem. We simply cannot do that. I was asked by the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the previous administration to speak about the obstacles to recovery, testified before a joint Senate and House committee in Ohio about the obstacles to recovery, and I'm here to address the obstacles to recovery. I met a man in D.C. who'd been to prison 6 times from Ohio. He got a chance, second chance, really, because several times he just sent directly to prison, but he went to treatment. When he said the difference, though, for him, he's now a chemical dependency counselor, a graduate of the University of Akron. He said the difference was the opportunity for recovery housing, because what's happening, in my view and from my experience, people finish treatment and it's just the beginning. They have to go somewhere different than the same place they came from. If they don't, it's the people, places, and things, especially places. If they don't, they're going to go right back to the same problem. A chance to be in recovery housing makes the difference in recovery and sometimes death, but continued use. The Mindful Healing Center has a facility, a women's recovery home in Warren County, and they're a great help. It's important to, from what I've read about this issue, it's important to understand the difference between homelessness and recovery housing. It's a big difference because the Mindful Healing Center, they're taking people off the streets wherever they are, Warren County, Middletown, and putting them back in their jobs. They get their children back. They get their lives back. That's the difference. People in recovery housing are trying to get better. They deserve to be treated with respect, and they're not the problem so much. It's just the obstacles that are there and the lack of understanding. I don't know exactly where we started because we were dealing with other things, but they're doing good work, and they're not a drain on services. There's just simply no basis for that. They probably have had, from what I understand, 0 to 1.
I have to cut you off there. I hate to, but we have a 4-minute limit, and I have to
Sure,
keep
I
everybody to
understand.
that. And I
Thank you very much.
appreciate you very much for coming out.
Yes.
Next, I have Beverly Akins.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Beverly Vance Akins. My address is 4747 Caprice Drive, Middletown, Ohio, 45044.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Vance Akins. I'm an addict. Most of you know my story because of the book and the Netflix movie that my son, Senator J.D. Vance, wrote, Hillbilly Elegy. What you don't know is that I got clean and sober January 19, 2015. I went to treatment in Kentucky and then went into recovery housing in Covington, Kentucky, and lived there for 18 months before returning to my home in Middletown. When I completed treatment at St. Elizabeth Hospital, I knew that I needed more support and accountability. I searched for housing in Middletown to no avail. Recovery housing facilities were practically non-existent in 2015. My community, the recovery community, are more fortunate today because of places like the Mindful Healing Center. The benefits I obtained by utilizing recovery housing are: 1, the ability to create meaningful, clean, and sober relationships; 2, ongoing support and structure; 3, valuable life skills; 4, my transition back into society was easier; 5, it reduced my risk of relapse; 6, I had access to connections such as counseling and 12-step meetings. People who live in recovery housing are closely monitored, regularly drug tested, and stand a much better chance of remaining clean and sober. Butler County, Ohio is ranked 7th in the state for accidental overdoses. I have the statistics here if anyone would like to see them. Fighting this is personal and professional to me. I'm a registered nurse in a substance abuse facility here in Butler County. And I see firsthand how our patients that go into recovery housing after treatment are more successful, and that, in my opinion, it's not just a benefit, it's a necessity to recovery. Recovery housing is not a drain on our resources. It greatly reduces 911 calls, and it saves lives. Tonight is the State of the Union. My friend Lisa Van Arsdale Sherman, whose father and brother are previous chiefs of police of our great city, is my son's guest at that event. Lisa lost her son, Stephen Eastep, October 28, 2011, to a heroin overdose at the age of 32. Stevie could get treatment, but he was unable to get the support that he needed after treatment to strengthen his recovery. We had no recovery housing in 2011. Please, on behalf of my family, my friend Lisa's family, and so many other unnamed addicts, help us recover. We want what everyone else wants. We want our families back in our lives, employment, and productive lives. Thank you for the opportunity to hear me.
Thank you. Next, we have Rocky Sexton, followed by Lamar Farrell.
Hey, Bev, I told you before, and I'm going to tell you again, I'm proud of you. You keep up the good work, darling.
Thank you.
I believe in you guys, man. I helped. I pushed hard to get this dream team together. You know, and I'm proud that you guys are on here and you guys work your tail end off. Anyway, good afternoon, council. I come before you today because the hot
Rocky,
topic
can
of
you
the
give us your address real quick? Sorry.
Rocky Sexton, 1912 Winton Street.
Thank you.
I come before you today because of the hot topic of the possibility of an aquatic center. Curious to see what the public had to say, I made a simple yes or no post or poll on a community of Middletown group I run with over 22,000 members, mostly Middletown citizens. Not everyone spoke up or voted out of 22,000 members, but 2,300 people did, and the result of the poll was 91% for it, 8% against, and 1% was unsure. And mind you, the poll only lasted 2 days. Most of the comments on the poll definitely was wanting an aquatic center of some sort, but also wanted more information naturally. We all have questions about it. We all are worried about future costs and responsibility, and we get that. The community has a lack of information on what it takes for a project like this to happen, of course, and if we proceed forward with it, maybe an open night discussion or Facebook Live event or questions, concerns, something like that to help the community to find out what we really want to do here. Our I-75 corridor is limited compared to other cities that are thriving around us. We all know that. It's been like that for years. Having something as interesting as an aquatic center and other development near our Middletown exit ramp should put us on the map once again, hopefully. I don't have all the answers or information that's needed to get us where we need to be, but having this ARPA money can tremendously towards our quality of life in Middletown. This is our one big chance to make huge difference for our citizens, and having something cool as this would open that door. I heard a lot of passion over the parks from the council, and the aquatic center falls right in place with that. Our kids need something huge, something to keep them out of mischief and occupied. I'm fortunate enough to have seen and enjoyed the Sunset Pool, as a kid, unlike Zach, who wasn't old enough. We need excitement. We need something to get people off the exit ramp to venture into our town. I'm hoping this project isn't just tabled, then forgotten about. I'm hoping, and I'm sure I'm speaking for the rest of the concerned citizens in our town by saying this, but a simple pause, the ideal, and do some more research so we all have the facts locked in before we vote it out permanently. Let's brainstorm this before we just toss it out. We need something exciting. Our citizens need a cool place to take our kids and grandchildren to. So that's all I got. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Farrell.
Lamar Farrell, 5002 Manchester Road, Middletown. Tonight, I'm here at the request of one of you just to talk from my heart. And so tonight is not, as a pastor, it's not preaching to, it's just talking with. I got a phone call on Saturday. I was flying back from a conference in California. Our city manager, Paul Lally, called me and he said, I'm sure you've heard about what's happened this morning with 2 young men whose lives were taken. And I did not, and I was not aware of that. As we began to talk, his heart was evident. He continued to talk about the need for our city to see help and healing. And I told him, I said, Paul, what's interesting is, I said, we're having a conversation, and tomorrow on Sunday morning, I'll stand before our congregation to talk about a title of a message series called #Until Love Runs This Town. You and I know this. This town that we are dedicated to deserves the best from all of us. There are so many towns that are run on greed or dollars or corruption or personality or politics or pride. But I really believe that this is not just a Sunday school lesson. I think it's a lesson for all of us. It's a lesson that I learned after preaching twice on Sunday morning when I went into a room filled with other leaders in our city. Some leaders who I even knew maybe didn't like me, and maybe I had had some animosity myself towards. But it was that moment where I think the Lord allowed me to learn again that I don't have it all figured out. That there's an area and areas of my life that I need to do better in, and it's really loving. Listen, you all have grand decisions that you have to make. You are pressured every day. I really appreciate your dedication. I really do. I look at all of you and I'm thankful for what you're doing. But I would say, as I said to our congregation on Sunday, if love is going to run this town, it must begin in this house. And I pointed to Baraka. It's got to begin in this house. Jesus would even say that we would be known, his disciples, his pupils, would be known by their love for one another. My encouragement to all of us in this city is that we must do whatever it takes to even put differences aside so that we can come together and see this city in a way that it should be. I've said it over and over again. The wonders of yesteryear in this city can be seen again. But I'm encouraging myself, I'm encouraging our congregation, and I'm encouraging this house, which starts with our city manager. It continues on and trickles down to you. I'm encouraging all of you to continue to work together while you love one another. While we love one another, we can be a part of something greater than ourselves. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. For neighborhoods to change, hearts have to change, homes have to change, communities can change, cities can change, states can change, nations can change, but it starts with you and I individually. And I would say again to you, thank you for all that you do. My prayers are with you as never before. We can see a change in this city, but it starts with our heart. This isn't a physical problem. This is a spiritual problem. That's where it begins. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our council comments. If we could start with Mr. Farrell. We'll go Farrell to Farrell.
I really have to follow that up?
I figured you were well suited for it.
Well, first of all, thanks for all the citizen comments. Second of all, there's no relation to Mr. Farrell. Mr. Farrell, he is my pastor, though, so I appreciate you being here. I guess really the only thing I want to address is the ARPA meeting. For me, I feel like it was very positive. No matter what is done with the money, I think the positivity behind it is it's going to go to something productive. It's going to go to something that moves the city forward, whether it's something you want, whether it's something I want, no matter what it is. It's not a negative. So for the people that feel that they're losing out on something, you're not actually losing out on something. You're going to gain something on the other hand. And I think that's something that I don't take lightly. So appreciate all you guys. Appreciate all the citizens that have reached out to me and kind of given their thoughts and everything. And, we still do have a little bit of money left. So if something comes up, we're always open to listening, and appreciate everybody's time. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Nini.
Thank you. At least I didn't have to follow Pastor Farrell. But your words certainly hit home. I mean, we talk about love and what it means and how it factors into our decision making. The love that we have for this city and the love that we have for its citizens is in every decision that we have to make. And it's what makes the decisions that we are tasked with so very difficult. So that being said, I certainly appreciate everybody who came out to our planning session and who shared their thoughts and their opinions and their passion for Middletown with us, because the ARPA money that we have is something that we won't have again. The opportunity that we have to bring quality of life to our citizens is something that I never thought that I would have the opportunity to be a part of. So when we talk about quality of life, that's a lot of different things. And for me, and I talked about this at the planning session, parks are a big part of that. So I'm encouraged that our park board has a meeting next week. talking about our board commitments and trying to share those things with you. I think we've got a couple of new park board members that are really excited about digging into the Parks Master Plan and all the meaningful things that we can do with the money that we have earmarked for parks. So they're very excited about that. And to speak to Rocky's comments about needing to get people off of the highway, I think we've got some really exciting and really promising things happening out by the highway that are the result of a lot of really hard work by our city manager and assistant city manager and our staff to bring a concept to hopefully get people off the highway. And so Planning Commission has a big conversation that they'll be having this week about that potential development, and I look forward to seeing the citizens come out for that, and I look forward to hearing what our Planning Commission has to say about the plans that have been drawn up for the entertainment center that will be on the other side of the highway. So, I mean, I think that we try, like I said, all the time to make decisions that will push our city forward in a positive direction with love. And I just appreciate the opportunity to do that. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Moon.
Yes, thank you. Just want to thank everybody that came down to speak. Appreciate your thoughts, your motivations, and all your efforts. Nothing but respect and appreciation from me for all that you guys are doing. No matter what the topic was tonight, I think you all spoke very well to your thoughts. Regarding Zach's thoughts on the ARPA session, I would just branch off that, and I would just share something with you all tonight that I whispered to the mayor when we were there. It's just how fortunate we are to even have this opportunity to discuss how we spend $20 million that we did not think we would have. Every request is really worthy of being funded. Unfortunately, they all can't be funded, but just an incredible opportunity for this city to capitalize on a once in a century lifetime. I don't know. I don't think we've ever seen this before. So we'll be doing our best to get it right and invest those dollars wisely. The last thing I have is more just an announcement. We are changing the date of the Airport Commission because of President's Day, which is typically on the 20th. It'll be on the 13th, which is next Monday. Same time, same place. We're just moving it up a day because of the holiday and the office closures. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Muterspaw.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Judge, for coming. I've heard you speak at several things over the last 5 years. I appreciate you coming. Bev, same for you. I know it's hard. Really can't comment on it, but we appreciate you being here because of some potential, legal issues. So just wanted to tell you thank you for being here. Not disrespectful, not talking about it, but you guys coming here means a lot. Appreciate it. I'll follow up on everybody else with ARPA. I think the cool thing about it for me with ARPA, that work session with so many people came out, and it's kind of like the last few meetings we've had outside of these chambers. A ton of people have came out, and that's what a city's supposed to have. They're supposed to have people come and be heard and listen and speak their minds. And I think the past few that we've had, we've been fortunate to have a community that cares. Because I remember a day when nobody came to these meetings. You might have 2 people in these seats for a council meeting years ago. So it's good to see people really involved, which is always awesome. Pastor Farrell, if you're still here, thank you for coming. I know how hard that is sometimes. And, we had an incident in our city that just was a horrible thing with young people that, it gets out of hand in life. And Lamar's, you're 100% correct in what you're saying. And I appreciate our city manager, Paul Lally, for putting together a task force so quickly to meet with community and clergy and everybody else to try to fix problems that sometimes we don't delve into. And one of our weaknesses, I think, like most cities, is we don't get together as a group until something bad happens. And when that's a failure on everybody's part, including ours as a council. We need to get together even during the good days to make sure we're ready for things like this when it happens. But thank you for putting that together. You didn't hesitate and you jumped on it. And Chief Burke, thank you as well for being so open and candid in your response to everybody at that meeting. So thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. And I'll just follow up on, the ARPA discussions. I want to put a little perspective just on it, and I think it's that we're all up here and in city staff trying to get to the same goal at the end of the day, and we're trying to use our that love of our community to get there. And that goal is to see our city prosper and see our citizens enjoying their life and their Middletown family. It's just that we just have different paths that we believe are going to get us to that same goal. So some of us see a longer game, some of us see a shorter game, some are somewhere in the middle. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same page. We all want to see that same goal. And so just, when I hear people get passionate about one specific project or another, I would urge us not to get frustrated with each other because we just have different opinions about how to get to the same goal. And I hope you saw our discussions in that meeting about ARPA to be just passionate about getting to that goal and nothing more than that. And I think we all feel that way as well. So that's all I have this evening, and that brings us to city manager reports. Mr. Lawley.
Thank you, Mayor Condrey, members of council. I got a couple things on the city manager's reports tonight. The first thing I would like to do is introduce our new airport manager. Her name is Jo Dibble. Jo?
Jo Dibble. I'm very thankful to be here, and I'm very excited about the airport.
Jo is a almost 25-year veteran of the United States Air Force. She retired as a colonel, and she has a very impressive resume. So much so that Nathan and I salute her every morning when she comes in. I feel like I have to. And she spent the last 2 weeks, like I did. What have I done? What did I get myself into? No, she's hit the ground running, and she's trying to get acclimated to the airport and the city. And we look forward to having just a great relationship with her, and I think she's going to do great things at the airport. So welcome aboard, Jo.
Hopefully you can teach Mr. Lawley how to salute a little better than that.
Oh, yeah. I would just the second thing I have is I'd like to announce that the Oakland Residential Historical District has been approved and will be listed on the Register of Historical Places, and that will happen by the end of March. So the Oakland District will be a historical section, so that's great. Thank you to Ashley and Deborah for all the work they did on that, and the Historic Commission. That's a great thing. Next on my list is I'd like to introduce Dr. Scott Rasmus, who is with the Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board. And I asked Dr. Rasmus to come tonight and talk to us and kind of educate us on what essentially recovery housing is. We've heard various names in this area: transitional living, sober living. And I think with all the information that's going on out there, what's going on in the present day world, especially here in Butler County, that Dr. Rasmus is probably the foremost person who can speak on this and give us the information that we need and give council an opportunity to ask him some questions if you have any. And so we're able to make good informed decisions in the future. So Dr. Rasmus, it's your time.
Well, hopefully you all can hear me. Let me turn this up a little bit. And thank you, City Manager Lawley, Mayor Condrey, and council members for this opportunity to talk. My focus tonight is just on education about recovery housing and how it differs maybe from some other types of programming. And, when I go at this, I just want to say my background is in mental health. I'm an independent marriage and family therapist, a licensed professional clinical counselor supervisor. I've got a PhD in counselor education. I've been in the field 25 years. Believe it or not, I started my career on the Samaritan's Suicide Hotline in Rhode Island. I was Scott 601 back in 1989. So it's been a long career, and obviously here at the board, I've been at the board for 15 years, and its executive director for the last 10. So in presenting on recovery housing, and I don't know if we can pull it up here. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to leave a document for you all got a lot of information and contacts. I'm one that cites things, so if you need to look things up afterwise or you want to call somebody, there's some good resources there for you. So moving on, I guess, let's go to the first slide. You know, recovery housing, I did some research, goes back in Ohio, and it goes by a definition. In June of 2014, House Bill 483, where it was defined, signed off by Governor Kasich. And then there's a great resource, the Ohio Recovery Housing Organization, which was launched in 2014 September. Prior to that, there was, recovery housing in essence, but there maybe wasn't a name or a certification body for it. But this really sort of kicked it off in Ohio and provided, a definition. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to provide through Ohio Revised Code 340. Ohio Revised 340 governs boards in our work as a mental health and addiction recovery services board. And it defines recovery housing here, and you've got a second definition from the National Alliance of Recovery Residents. But notice there's, notice drug-free living, sober living, healthy living environments. Notice it's multiple drugs, alcohol, drugs, and associated problems. And then addiction services and assistance. And as we get to the point where we look at the levels of recovery housing, you'll see the higher the level, the more clinical services, like a level 4 recovery housing can provide. And as you get down to the lower levels, you'll see that it's more peer support, supported housing units. If we can move on. So the first thing, I want to emphasize, and there's a chart that I've given you all. It's chart 1, and it comes from one of my providers. You'll see a listing here of detox services, residential, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient, and outpatient services. And if you look at that chart, one thing, as a differentiation here is this is not a homeless drop-off. There's a lot more structure. A lot of folks that are homeless or in the community that have not received supportive services to address addiction are not stabilized. And so there's a process here, and you'll see, through detox services, hospital services, and things like that, that takes place first before you even begin to look at recovery housing as an outlet. And then as you look through that chart that I've given you, you'll start to see recovery housing at a level 3, a level 2, a level 1 as you start going through the lower numbers here. And that's because people in recovery over time come to a place where they look to services such as recovery housing, and that helps them get back on their feet. It gives them a residence. It gives them, they will have to pay rent over time. Usually with recovery housing, there's some subsidies for rent to start off with, and then they are required to find work and work towards being independent citizens and getting back in the community. And so recovery housing, as you look through this continuum, is on more of the tail end of this recovery. Folks are always in recovery, but recovery treatment process. And so it's sort of one step away from sort of independence and getting back in the community as a working individual in a lot of ways, if they haven't already. So, so anyway, if we can move on to the next chart. And this is the chart you have that lists the levels. And you can see this chart comes from Ohio Recovery Housing. And notice as you look at a level 4, which is the highest level, this is a service provider. Treatment services are typically being happened, a lot of oversight. And then moving down to supervised, then monitored, and then just pure run services, so which is a level 1. There aren't typically clinical services provided. These are folks getting back on their feet, again, looking for a residence, looking for a place to live, looking for work so that they can be, independent working in the community. So if we can move on to the next slide. So, there's a lot of structure, as you can begin to see. Some of that has been loose, but if you go to these sites, Oxford House, NAR, CARF, and the representative for NAR in Ohio is Ohio Recovery Housing. There's a lot of documents, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of structure, there's questionnaires, there's listings of where the housing is across Ohio and in Butler County, and the ones that are certified and the ones that are not. There's a code of ethics listed there. There's checklists on what recovery housing, should have. Policies for the clients or the residents that live there, safety protocols, and things of that nature. So as you can see, this isn't just sort of a loose structure. There's very specific supports and standards and policies to support these certified recovery housing processes. If we can go to the next slide. So what I wanted to do is, and I'm a person that looks at research, studies. In my doctorate program, I took courses in advanced statistics and presented, at different conferences and things like that. So stats is really right in, sort of my wheelhouse and my interest. So what I wanted to do was to poll some recovery houses locally. And one of these is not in Butler County, the other 3 are. And the board, by the way, supports one recovery house with our funding, which covers about 49 units. But what you can see here is some questions when in the survey. Successfully completed treatment, so 3 of the 4 responded, 90 to 100% at an average of 96%. Obtained employment before leaving the program. Again, end of 3 responded, 50 to 100%, average 76%. Residents volunteer on a daily basis, and I've highlighted daily because, some of these may volunteer 3 times a week, which isn't daily, but, this specifically asks for daily. 29 to 100%, average 56%. Fully abstinent of all mind and mood-altering drugs in the program. I've asterisked that because 2 of the recovery houses told me they have policies to address this. For example, zero tolerance policies. If somebody's using, as you could see, when we looked at the flow chart, and I think in the levels, there's screening that goes on, drug screening. If they fail a drug screen, usually there's provision for maybe a 7-day grace period or things like that to try to get back on the program process here and be sober and to endorse the recovery housing process. But after that, usually 2 strikes and you're out. You're no longer in the recovery house, for instance, and then obviously there's provisions for other supports and whatnot, but there is, again, not a lot of tolerance for use in these facilities, and they're screened and monitored along the process. Okay, next slide. Residents obtain a daily 12-step group. Notice daily again. Notice 25 to 100%, average 65. One of the providers that maybe had a little bit lower percentage indicated that they encouraged daily 12-step, that's AA, NA types of programs, maybe 3 times a week instead of daily. So obviously it depends on the question and how you ask it. Next, residents obtained a sponsor and actively worked the program 25 to 100%, about 70% on average across all providers. The next one is recidivism rate after completion of the program. 2 said that they didn't track data on this, and it's tough to collect data on this, and I'll explain that in a minute. But 1 said only 12%, that's 1 out of 8. Or another responded, they didn't put a number on it, but strongly continues sobriety presence. Why this is hard to track is because when people leave, cell phones may get lost or not used. People leave the area, and then they may not answer when you call in 6 months or 9 months or 12 months to see if folks are still sober. It's follow-up statistics, and it's typically hard to get. And finally, annually, how many community resource visits per recovery house? N equal 3. So what this says is how many times in a year did fire, EMS, police come out to that recovery house? And the answer was 0.6. It was less than 1 call or visit per year per recovery house over 7 recovery house settings. Locally, mostly, if there was an indication, I think the 3 that I identified, 2 were medically related. So what this means is that it's very rare that community supports go out to these recovery houses, as you can see, because of the structure and how they're run. It's very different if we can move to the next slide. So I know there's been talk about transitional housing, and you've probably heard of permanent housing. But I wanted to just give you a contrast here with recovery housing, which can be considered transitional, but you've probably heard about permanent supportive housing, housing first models. These are models that go into housing supports or housing units who are actively using. And the notion is to provide for them on the lower end, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, take care of their needs, for shelter and food and whatnot, and try to encourage them to continue into recovery. But in these kinds of permanent, notice the word permanent, it may be 20 calls to the community in a year, which would be, as you can say, maybe 40 times what you'll see in these recovery housing units. So the reason I put this slide up here, I wanted you to make sure that you recognize, even though it's transitional and permanent, and you would think permanent would be a better situation, depending on how it's defined, operationally defined, there's a difference here. And I wanted to just emphasize that to you. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to leave some resources for you. Here's Ohio Recovery Housing. Daniel Gray has come to present to my board a couple of times. If you're interested in learning a lot more about recovery housing, she's a great resource and has come down even to speak to in Fairfield when we were looking at recovery housing, and there was a committee down there. And here's her phone number and some contact information. And next, please, next slides. Will be a question and answer, and then after this, there's some resources and references. Notice I've cited websites and things like that for your perusal and research. And so with that aside, I'm going to just open it up to questions. I've also given you our quick service guide. I've given you my card. I'm happy to talk with you at any point, at any time. And even if we disagree on things, I think it will be well worth our time. So. Anyway, I'm going to just open it up to you all now.
Yes, I did have one question, Dr. Rasmus. Thanks for coming. What are you hearing throughout the county, since you service the county? What other communities, what are they looking at as far as, transitional housing and those type of things?
And thank you for asking that. And I work very closely with the commissioners. Commissioner Carpenter has a housing group, an executive housing group, and City Manager Lawley was at the last meeting. We're discussing and trying to assess what the need is. There was a study by Sally Lucan from the Stepping Up Initiative that identified that there needs to be more permanent supportive housing in Butler County, especially looking at folks that are getting a release from the Butler County Jail and needs for housing. I think 190 units were identified. There's also a need for supports. If anybody goes into any kind of housing, especially with behavioral health and addiction issues, there needs to be case management support and treatment support to wrap around them. But there's a lot of needs. I can't tell you, what I can tell you, maybe I can specifically say, many of you are aware I'm looking at a crisis stabilization unit in Butler County, and then supports for that. I'm looking at mental health housing in the county, because our group home network for those with mental illness, often severe mental illness, is limited. I've got 15 people on a mental health group home list right now, and we've pretty much bought up all the beds, both in Butler County and sources and sites outside of Butler County. So the need is great, and again, I'm only coming at it from a behavioral health perspective.
Sure. Are there other communities, Oxford, Hamilton, Fairfield, Westchester, Liberty, that are looking at, implementing some of this, or is it really just in the study phase where you're trying to quantify the need?
So we are in a investigation stage, but I think you all are aware there's a lot of energy to look at a county-wide approach to this, to get everybody at the table, and then look at where the resources are needed, where the populations are, and then service them best. And I can say in that housing meeting I sit in with Commissioner Carpenter and I report to the other commissioners, there's a pretty good cross-section in there. Middletown, Fairfield Township, Oxford, Fairfield, are sitting there, and everybody seems to be at the table looking to see what we can do. I think the next step is to see, to finish the analysis, look where the need is, and then decide where these houses go. Because I see the need, and obviously if it doesn't go in one location because of whatever reason there is, then where can it go? Not only in that city or that jurisdiction or that township, we need to begin to identify where these sites, housing sites can go for recovery housing, mental health housing, stabilization units, things like that. So yeah, it's important, and time is of the essence because the clock is ticking. The need is great.
Thank you. Do we have a map of existing housing associated with any of these different treatment flow chart phases, but where they're located within the county and the region and the capacity of each one?
That's a very good question, and that's something that we haven't embarked on, but I think it needs to be done in support of that, sort of county-wide assessment of need. And even for myself, as I said earlier, we support 49 units of recovery housing in Butler County, but that's not all of it. That's maybe half of it. And knowing exactly where they are, we do know, but what's the capacity of each is something to definitely investigate further. I just want to say this on the recovery housing piece, just a quick story, and I'll keep it short. I asked one of my staff members to look into the DSM-5-TR. DSM-5-TR you can get, it's a Bible, it's the Bible of mental disorders. And I asked him to look up opiate use disorder and what does it say about prevalence. 4.5% to 5% of the adult population. Now think of Butler County. 4.5% to 5% of 390,000 people, that's 18,000 to 20,000 people. And then look at the recovery housing beds we have. We support 49. There may be another 50. That's 100 in Butler County. But 18,000 to 20,000 people. Not all of them would need recovery housing, but when you only have 100, it doesn't address the need by far. So,
Yeah. I
anyway.
think understanding where things currently are located helps in planning so that there's not a concentration of them all in one area specifically, and they're appropriately spread out.
Right. So yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm sort of a sponge, so in recognizing that, we will begin to embark on that so that we have that for you all. So as you can see, I'm very much a research stat, based person, so because I think research, both qualitative and quantitative, speak. And especially the more local, the better. Or if it's studies or practices that are evidence-based, obviously they are highly recognized. I'm willing to do that if it can facilitate dialogue and good discussion, so we know what we have out there and what we need. And also any of your concerns. I'm very open to any of your concerns too. Notice the data that I had in there about community resource supports that are needed, and of course I read the paper and I see that that's a concern for communities. That's why I put those stats up there tonight.
Thank you. Any
other questions?
Thank you very much for all you're doing and for sharing your information with us tonight.
Well, I'm very blessed to be here, glad to talk with you. You have my card. I'm willing to talk with any of you at any time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawley, do you have anything else under your city manager reports?
That's all I have this evening.
Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please present the consent agenda for us?
For your consideration this evening, we have the approval of the city council minutes from January 3rd, 2023. To receive and file the following board and commission minutes: the library board from July 20th, August 17th, September 21st, October 19th, and December 14th, 2022. The cemetery board minutes from October 19th, 2022. The historic commission minutes from December 12th, 2022. To confirm the personnel appointments of Sarah Clemens to the position of income tax auditor in the Department of Finance, Division of Taxation. Christina Cooper to the position of assistant finance director in the Department of Finance. Penny Jewell to the position of dispatcher in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police. Zayden Duggins and Caleb Idle to the position of firefighter EMT in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. And to receive and file oaths of office for Alexis Manning and Nathan Morgan.
I would move that the matters listed under the consent agenda be considered routine and enacted by one motion and one vote of consent.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
For the motion agenda to request a multi-year contract with Grove Central LLC of Baltimore, Maryland for the biosolids management service at the water reclamation facility.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
To authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with B.D. Morgan and Company Incorporated to install 3 new overhead doors on the sewer and water maintenance building in an amount not to exceed $228,829.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Abstain?
To authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Thomas Landscaping and Lawn Care LLC of Monroe, Ohio for up to $40,000 for mowing and vegetation control services at Middletown Regional Airport for 2023.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Abstain?
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
And to adopt a program for the disposal of vacant residential lots that are deemed not suitable for infill construction.
So moved for adoption.
Second?
Any comments or questions?
I'm sorry, was that you?
Mr. Moon
Tal?
was the second.
Sometimes you and Mr. Farrell sound the same if I'm not looking at you.
I just wanted to comment that I appreciated the due diligence about the tax delinquencies and the ordinance violations that was put in this one. And do we have a plan for how we're going to communicate this out?
I didn't hear.
Do we have a plan about how we're going to communicate the program out into the community?
Yeah, through the city website, we will put it out.
Okay.
And I'll
It'd be
talk
nice if
with
we had a push
Development
of
Services
information
to see if
somehow
there's
as well.
any other ways we can do that.
Yeah.
I thought I saw a piece in the legislation about the marketing and advertising expenses associated with, maybe I didn't, no.
I don't think so. Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes. That brings us to legislation this evening. Mr. Yoder.
Sure, thank you very much. You've got 8 legislative items on the agenda proposed for passage, the first 6 of which are proposed for passage as first reading emergencies. So before I get started, I just request a motion to waive the charter provisions pertaining to second readings and effective dates for emergencies.
I would move that, let me see, items, ordinance number O-2023-08, ordinance number O-2023-09, resolution number R-2023-01, resolution number R-2023-02, ordinance number O-2023-10, resolution number R-2023-03, and
Just the first
resolution
6
number
are
seven-
proposed for passage as emergencies tonight. The 7th, which is what you might be pondering, is not proposed for passage.
Right,
Is an
no
emergency
action until the
tonight.
next meeting. So I
Correct.
would move that the ordinances and resolutions be considered an emergency item and to waive the enactment, the 30 days to enactment.
Yep, and passed as one reading tonight.
Yes.
Second?
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
No.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Thank you. The first item is ordinance number O-2023-8, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Bachman Commercial for the purchase of 6 2023 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 trucks for the Departments of Public Works and Utilities and Development Services and declaring an emergency.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Lawley. Oh, sorry. Muterspaw had the second. Mr. Lawley.
Normally I do that.
I know.
Council, this situation is much like the situation with the Division of Fire last meeting where the state bids are, you can't get vehicles through the state bid. It's very difficult to find vehicles for replacement. In item number 1, this is for the purchase of 6 vehicles in various parts of our public works. 5 of them are replacement vehicles, and 1 is an additional truck for the electronics fleet. And this, just like the fire department, the Bachman Commercial out of Louisville, Kentucky, is the business that is able to get us the vehicles the soonest. And once again, the reason it's an emergency, this is a situation where if we don't act on it now, they're going to go to the next municipality or business in line.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes. Second item is ordinance number O 2023-09, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Bachman Commercial for the purchase of 3 2023 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 HD trucks for the divisions of streets and grounds and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
The same situation here. This will be for 2 replacements and 1 addition to the fleet.
Any comments or questions on this one? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Muederspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Third item is resolution number R 2023-01, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. This has to do with the Community Development Act 1974 fund.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Hall.
Council, this is to allot the CDBG and the CDBG-CU funds totaling $663,944 to reimburse the city for public infrastructure, essentially the cost of paving, curb and gutter repair, work on handicap access ramps from our 2020 and 2021 budget, and this must be expended by March 2nd, 2003. When these monies are received by the city, we can determine where to put them in the general fund or use them for other infrastructure, park, neighborhood revitalization programs.
This seems like it was maybe done a little bit out of order. I just want to make sure that it was done in accordance with the CDBG fund regulations. I know in the past
Yes.
we've not
Yes.
done that and had to pay out of general fund later.
Yep, we looked at this exhaustively over the last several weeks. Essentially, this got caught up. This was a situation where 2 administrations ago had determined where these funds were going to be spent, essentially towards repair and restructuring of Oakland Park. However, with the changeover of 2 administrations, and not to blame the COVID situation, essentially we realized that these funds, this repair, the upgrade of Oakland Park wasn't accomplished. We could not do that in the time frame we have to spend the funds, but after discussion with CDBG, we do have received that what we are putting this towards is allowable.
Okay, and are we considering using future CDBG funds for the Oakland Park still?
Up till 2025, yes, and then we are going to have to make a determination in the next 5 years if we want to identify the Oakland area as the recipient of those 5-year funds or if we want to look at somewhere else in the city.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just my thought on that topic. I don't know which fund is the right fund to use, but, you know, we've been talking to that community for a long time about investing in that park, and I would like to see that happen in the not terribly distant future.
Yep.
I agree.
And that's what we've been discussing, yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Fourth item is resolution number R 2023-02, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, Counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency pertaining to the street levy fund.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Lawley?
Council, this is to allow the appropriation of $4,529,980 from the unappropriated city levy funds to the various accounts stated in the report to spend on our 2023 levy paving program.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Fifth item is ordinance number O 2023-10, an ordinance authorizing the amendment of a contract with Lutz Construction Management Company for the police locker room remodel and declaring an emergency.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Council, this is to account for an overage in our police locker room that was unforeseen. Issues such as structural and repair issues when the work was being performed had to be done, and it was a matter of we actually could have got away with not doing the repairs, but it was quite obvious that we would have to go back in, tear walls out of areas that were just built and make these repairs. So I had them go ahead and let's do it right, let's get it done, and see what monies we can save that might cover some of the overage. Some of them, we also had to do some very major repairs to piping and stuff like that, which came out of our normal infrastructure funds for the building repair. This $6,999.78 is to cover what we couldn't cover with those funds.
This is the second amendment. Burke, next time when you come with an amendment asking for breath mints in those lockers. Oh, I just want to make a quick note. I think the staff report is off by, it's 99 cents high.
I noticed that
Okay.
late this afternoon. In one section of the staff report, it has 7,078, but the correct is $6,999.78.
Looks like the ordinance
Building
is
a
right. I
buffer.
did all the math.
The ordinance is right, yes. I checked that this afternoon. The ordinance is right. That's police math for you.
99 cents for the breath mints.
It's a buffer.
Yeah.
It's a buffer.
The police.
Runs over.
Any comments or questions on this one? Okay, Mr. Lawley, will you please, Mr. Lawley, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms.
You
Nenny?
can if you want.
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Muterspaw?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes. Sixth item is resolution number R 2023-03, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, Counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2023, and declaring an emergency. This pertains to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 fund.
So moved for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Lawley.
Council, this is $500,000 from the city ARPA funds to support the Butler Tech Educational Facility hangar. It was discussed at our work session a couple Saturdays ago. We did not come to any consensus on it. However, I did receive information from a couple members of council that stated they wanted this to come forward to tonight's council meeting and the money be appropriated.
Just to be clear, this can be used or paid for out of ARPA funds, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And we do not own the building. Butler Tech will own the building.
Butler Tech will own the building, we will own the land.
I still don't have any questions answered from the ARPA discussions. I know Paul, I talked to you about that, about details about the lease, any corporate buy-in from any companies, if other communities have paid money into Butler Tech buildings, the Butler Tech financials themselves. In the absence of receiving any of those, I I mean, I looked on the internet, it looks like they're 33 million in positive cash position right now. They're one of the most well-funded programs. Their government fund balance alone is $28,665,940. They have plenty of debt capacity. I don't believe that we should be spending city dollars on this without doing more research. I don't know the why as to why they need city and government money for it. We haven't seen their financials, or they haven't come to the table with what Butler Tech themselves is putting in. So I just, I don't have enough answers to those questions. I also don't understand why we're in a first reading emergency for a speculative building. That has evaded me, why there's a rush to put in a building that we don't know what the end use is for yet. I'm fully supportive of the efforts that they're making. I think the hangar has a ton of potential. I just don't think it's been figured out yet what exactly it's for, and there's not sufficient corporate buy-in. If there are jobs out there that can't be filled, then those companies who can't fill those jobs should be at the table. We should know what those companies are, and I would love to see them buying into this hangar and spending some private dollars to help get that workforce up to speed. So I just don't feel like it's we're at the point where I'm ready to commit $500,000 to it, so I'll be a no. But I understand there have been council members speaking since the last meeting that have gained enough votes to push this forward. So. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Meterspaugh?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
No.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes. Thank you. Item number 7 is resolution number R 2023-04, a resolution authorizing the city manager to file an application with the U.S. Department of Transportation for a grant under the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, or RAISE, discretionary grant program and declaring an emergency. No actions requested until the February 21st, 2023 meeting.
Mr. Lawley.
Council, we had granted Ohio Soda LLC a small business grant to have the work completed in 6 months. We're on 8? 7. Did I skip one? Oh, I skipped one. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's the second time I've done that.
It's okay. I asked you to call the roll, so we're
Let me
we're even.
regroup here. Sorry about that. Number 7 is for us to authorize the city manager to apply for and accept the Department of Transportation's Rebuilding America Infrastructure Grant. And this actually will allow us to apply for the grant to develop the transportation master plan.
Does anybody have any questions at this time about it? Okay.
Now officially on number 8 we'll go. So ordinance number O 2023-11 is an ordinance authorizing an amendment to the small business grant agreement between the city of Middletown and Ohio Soda LLC. Again, it's a first reading.
I was trying to hurry. Okay, so council, this is, we had issued a small business grant to Ohio Sodas LLC, who reside at 1700 Central Avenue. They received a small business grant in the sum of $40,000. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, unable to source out certain contractors in the 6-month time frame, having problems with the supply chain issues, they have requested an extension of an additional 9 months, which would take that up to May 31st of 2023.
When was this? Did this first expire? Because obviously
It first
May is
expired, did I write that down?
6 months ago.
Or was it 6 months from, it would have been 6/10/22 if it was
I'm
executed
just
on
curious why we're
It was around
getting
September.
this 6 months.
September. It expired September 1st.
And when did they request to extend?
Originally in October.
They sent us a request in October?
We began talking with them in October.
Ah, okay.
Jacob had some conversations with them prior to that, but we really started talking with them in October when it cycled around us, going back and checking to see where grantees are in the process.
And how is the money dispersed to them in this particular grant? I can't recall. Have they received any funds to date? Are they having to submit reimbursements? Sorry.
It's 100% reimbursement, so the applicant in this case, or the developer in this case, has not received a dollar from the city yet.
Okay, is it like rolling reimbursements or at the end of the?
It's at the end, it's at completion, so
Okay.
once they obtain their certificate of occupancy, the original grant that was issued by the city has some minimum requirements. They have to show that they've spent a certain amount of dollars for
Right.
the interior improvements, the facade, some other things. And once that documentation is reviewed and accepted, then a reimbursement check would be cut.
Okay, and we've verified they've pulled all the appropriate permits and everything for all the work that they've
Yes,
done? Okay.
Jacob has done that.
Great, thank you.
Remind me, and you may not know, I went through that building and it was, one step short of decaying.
Yes.
What do you think the capital investment on their end is?
I think at the end of the day, they're going to be well north of probably $250,000 just in the resident area of the.
I bet it's even north
I think
of
their
that.
expense,
Probably
the
is,
expense sheet they provided to us was $394,954.
Okay, cool.
But that included the purchase price of the building at $144. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking construction costs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's been, just from an outside perspective, it's been nice to see that building getting cleaned up, and you can see it even from it's most noticeable from the back of that building,
Right.
the impact that cleaning it up has made, so.
Colorful.
If we can give them the opportunity to continue to push forward and.
Yes.
Yep, that's the request, yep.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that one? That's the end of our legislation this evening. Do we have any new business items that anyone would like to raise tonight?
I just wanted to make one comment, and Amy shared the email earlier, but if you didn't see it or it went to spam, as has been happening, the municipal league's going to host their first countywide for all office holders, and even staff is welcome to attend. At the Golden Lamb on February 15th, the speaker will be Commissioner Shannon Jones, and she's going to talk about the Warren County workforce development initiatives that they're working on. So that's at 6 p.m. at the Golden Lamb, if anybody is interested.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we have a request to move to executive session. I understand we no longer need the first executive session request. So we have, under the authority of ORC 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage. Do we have a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Skank, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Meaderspaw?
Yes.
Ms. Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Mr. Farrell?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
And following that, I presume we will close the meeting. We have nothing to vote about, correct? Correct. Okay, then we will come back on the 21st of February for our next city council meeting here in council chambers at 5:30 p.m. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.
Kenny's, that screensaver is disturbing.